Chapter 15. Finding a Mate. 7 terrible days followed. The pup, unable to hunt, had done little except tear at the wire and occasionally lie and sleep in utter exhaustion. His skin was badly chafed, his muscles injured. He lived on old bones, on grass that he dug up, and for drink, on many mouthfuls of snow. Greyback had been remarkably faithful in his peculiar way. In spite of the big black's temper from the pain and worry, he had stayed in the vicinity and often stepped up close to work at the wire and try to shear it in two. It was by inadvertently getting one of his front teeth tightly caught in the knot itself that he finally loosened its deadly hold. In a sudden panic, he had leaped away to free himself. The wire had bent, then relaxed its tension all in an instant, the noose flying along the trailing end and giving the agonized black the opportunity to spring free. After that, weak as he was, the pup rolled around in the snow and roared his joy to the four winds until the rocks re-echoed. Greyback, sharing in the excitement, joined in with his higher-pitched voice. Again and again the long drawn-out howls drifted down the valley. Then the black pup pitched himself full length in the snow and slept for hours. A few days later his strength had come back, and he was once more flying down the deer trails with Greyback. Game was still plentiful, in spite of the fact that 2 packs of wolves were operating in the valley. The mating season was again at hand, so quarrels were beginning to be frequent among the wolves and disturbing to the almost perfect leadership that had developed through the first months of winter. The most northerly pack, led by an old gray, contained the ill-assorted number of 5 males and only 2 females. One of the latter had chosen the leader for mate, but the other was particularly coy, and by her indecision kept the jealousy of the 4 bachelor wolves at high pitch. Fights were frequent, and ill feeling kept the pack in a dangerous mood. The 2 brothers avoided all other wolves whenever possible, but during one of the deer drives came upon the pack of 7 near a lick. Deer and moose paths entered here from many directions. Scents and tracks were in such abundance as to be confusing to trailers. After looking each other over and milling about in the runways, the wolves went their different ways, but the black pup suddenly saw that a gray wolf was closely following him. Suspicious and irritated, he stopped to investigate. He realized that he had seen this one before, and that indeed it was the young female which had been with the hunger-maddened grays when he and Greyback were attacked. He turned away with contempt and took up the hunting. The gray, however, continued to follow. Up on the wooded ridge, Greyback made a kill. He had waylaid the yearling doe that the black was trailing. After a few mouthfuls, Greyback stopped long enough to call. The black one at once joined him, and the gray coyly came too. Greyback was immensely interested in the newcomer, but was snapped at whenever he made friendly advances. While the 3 were feeding, one of the pack male wolves suddenly appeared. He had followed the trail of the female, and was in a bad temper over her desertion. When he saw Greyback, he flew at him in jealous rage. The battle was short. Greyback was not anxious to fight, and took the first opportunity to back away, but with much snarling. The black, who had been walking about in stiff-legged neutrality, was the lovelorn male's next victim. The newcomer trotted forward, growling evilly, and threw himself at the black's throat, his teeth caught and ripped. Nothing more was needed to arouse the black's fury. He roared and sprang. Down went the other male under a rush that bore him deep into the snow. Then the black slashed him, and boring in, slashed him again. Another male suddenly appeared and seized his flank. The black whirled and closed with him. This one was a wicked fighter, and he tried to maim by ripping the legs. The black parried and sprang to one side. Then he rushed. Again that roar. The second male would have been killed in a minute had he not broken loose and run away. Before the 2 brothers had finished eating and licking wounds, 2 more males came running up the trail. This time the black did not wait to be attacked. He saw that the two were looking for trouble and he gave it to them. But the fight was a hard one, for the two worked like a trained team and kept him leaping about to avoid leg bites. At last he had them both badly ripped on the head and neck. They were glad to back away, and when the black made one last rush, they went running helter-skelter down the mountain with no shred of dignity left. Blood was trickling down the black's left flank. He had 2 gashes on the neck, and a front leg was chewed near the elbow. He crouched down and began to clean with his tongue the 2 wounds he could reach. Out of the bushes came the gray female, and timidly licked the blood and poison from his great neck. After that, for several days, the gray regularly followed the 2 brothers wherever they went. Grayback continued to show her attention, which she would not notice, and the black entirely ignored her. Finally, one evening, Grayback's attentions became so troublesome that she turned on him in a fighting mood. She meant to hurt him, and she did. He, in turn, forgot his chivalry and fought back. Gradually, the fight became bitter. The black seemed not to notice it, but when the noise and the scrambling about was at its height, the wrinkles suddenly gathered over his eyes, and he flung himself between them. Grayback turned all his anger against his brother, and for some moments the 2 big wolves walked backwards and forwards side by side, showing their teeth and growling. The black, however, was not looking for a fight, and so turned away. Grayback then saw his chance and sprang. He caught the other by the throat and hurled him to the ground. He had things all his own way, and he made the most of his opportunity. The love madness was in his blood. He meant to kill, and he had the black down and that huge throat in his teeth. He bored in with all the strength in his body. Then suddenly a howl of pain came from his clenched teeth, and he let go. The black had twisted around until he caught the other's foreleg and worked it back between the great shearing teeth. In another instant he could have crushed it, but Grayback howled in a panic and strained to get away, for instinct told him what it meant to have a foot injured. Slowly, the black got to his feet, still holding the leg, and as he rose, he pushed the other wolf just as slowly to the ground and turned him on his back. One crunch, and the leg would be useless for life, but the black stood there holding it and looking at the craven brother. At length he let go and walked away with all the dignity of his race, and with him went the gray female, and though he had not been interested in her before, from that time he accepted her as mate. For many years these 2 were not to be separated, and through all that time they remained faithful to each other. That spring they dug a den in a remote canyon and raised 4 black little wolves. No one found their home, nor was able to catch the whelps, which were much wiser than most of their kind. In the autumn, they all came down the Porcupine, and began one of the strangest reigns of terror among the game animals that wolves had ever perpetrated in that wild valley. It was then that the black really earned his name of the King, and it was that Johnny Rogers, now head forester, again came into the picture.